exactly is going on. And in studio we are joined by Suba Member of Parliament John Mbadi, who will help us understand what's going on. We're also expecting Mr. Kimani Ichung'wa, MP for Kikuyu, who'll be joining us a bit later. And then of course we have Mutegi Njau. And remember, any questions you have, 22422 is the SMS line. Send them and Mutegi will be able to fill them, as well as any comments and suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. For now, I'll hand you over to Mutegi. Mutegi?
Good morning, Mheshimiwa. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Very fine, thank you.
Yes.
To me, the surprising thing is that I've been reporting Auditor General's report since I was a young reporter in the 80s. I've never seen such kind of uproar about a report by the Auditor General. Normally, public servants accept it. When the Auditor General does his report, it takes to the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee. Then they are summoned. The accounting officers are summoned. Then they are listened to. Then recommendations are made. Why is this uproar like this? Without even having been to, the report is not even tabled in Parliament.
Well, the report is now officially tabled in Parliament,
okay.
But I think I agree with you that this year's Auditor General's report on government expenditure is generating unusual heat. And I think this is partly because this is the first audit report on government expenditure during the tenure of the Jubilee administration. Remember, this is the 2013-2014 audit report, and that is covering the period from the beginning July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2014. And so this is the first scrutiny on the Jubilee administration, and it has a lot to do with the how sensitive people are at the moment with regards to corruption and accountability and integrity. And so I think the Jubilee administration is finding some kind of discomfort that the first report on their administration is damning. And so you expect such kind of reaction. But it's unusual because for the first time we are seeing the Treasury CS who is actually supposed to be implementing the recommendation, the final recommendation. And once the auditor has done his report, the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament does interrogate the report and does another report, which then would be tabled in Parliament. And once passed, the implementing agency is actually the Treasury, which would be expected by law to prepare a Treasury memorandum to show to Parliament what steps have been taken against those officers who will be found finally culpable.
But most of these people have been in government before. Uhuru, for instance, was a Minister for Finance. He was a Minister for Local Government.
Yep.
Ruto, the Deputy President, was a Minister for Agriculture, Minister for Education. Why are they so sensitive? Why don't they wait until the report is... I don't see what is new. Just that because they're new government?
Well, for me, it may point to two things. One, either, when you are guilty, you probably could be too sensitive. I want to believe that they are not guilty. But if that kind of sensitivity they're showing is, to me, an indication of maybe some guilt or the other. But I leave that to our Committee of Parliament, that is Public Accounts Committee, to come up with a final judgment whether the audit report is accurate to the extent that the government ministries and departments failed completely to address themselves to audit queries. But something I think that also we need to point out at this point in time is some of the stories that I've seen and the condemnations that I've seen in the media coming from government ministries and even the Treasury, that the Auditor General is wrong to have raised queries on documentation which could not be provided. It should be understood that the accounts of government are prepared. The law has given all ministries between July 1st and September 30th to prepare accounts and be ready for audit. And that is why, Mutegi, if you work with government, the month of July is very difficult. That's the time that you cannot even be paid. Because the government is assumed to have closed the accounts and they're preparing the accounts. Then from September 30th or 1st of October to December 31st, that is what the law, the period that the law gives the Auditor General now to interrogate and investigate the government accounts. then after which they are supposed to present report to Parliament. But the Auditor General gave ministries, in my view, enough time, because the report was just read in May, which is in violation of the Constitution already. But the Auditor General said he did not want to do half-baked report. He wanted to get some clarity and clarification from the various ministries. So I don't understand this ulabalu about documents having been brought late. Even bringing them late is in itself unprocedural and illegal.
It looks like some people are casting aspersions on the performance of the Auditor General. Could it be the fact that the Auditor General is also not very experienced? Is this his first or second audit?
No, not really. I think the Auditor General has been in office for a while now. I think if my memory serves me right, this current Auditor General came into office in 2011. And so he must have presented report on 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 now. But beyond that, the Auditor General could be new, but the staff in that department, in that office, are not new. It's just the Auditor General who is new, maybe with a few officers, a few of his officers. But the majority of the staff in the Auditor General's office who actually carry out the actual work are not new. I think there is nothing really new about the structure and the nature of the questions that the Auditor General is raising. What we need to ask ourselves is why the government at this point in time and this time round is so sensitive and jittery about this audit report.
Most of the complaints from governors, from the cabinet secretaries, is that, like for instance, Waiguru, when there are issues about Minister of Devolution, she said, and in fact she paid for newspaper advertisement, saying that the queries were asked by the Auditor General about those procurements on those whatever questions were being asked about accounts. And they did answer. They answered the Auditor General explaining what the issue was. But the Auditor General decided, or out of whatever reason, did not incorporate the audit queries answers in his report. That has been the major complaint from the ministries and from the governors.
This, you know, I have been, Mutegi, I have been working in parliamentary committees investigating government expenditure for quite some time now. Last term I was in Public Investment Committee. This time I'm in Public Accounts Committee. That story is the same. Whenever accounting office appears before committees, they claim to have provided sufficient explanation to the Auditor General. When you put them to task, and by the way, our committee meetings, the Public Accounts, Public Investment Committee, the Auditor General's representative is permanently there as part of the committee, and the Treasury. And a lot of times, the accounting officers claim to have provided sufficient answers, only to discover later that the truth is that the answers were not sufficient. And by the way, the fact that you have tried to offer an explanation to Auditor General does not mean the Auditor General gets convinced. So you may probably have offered an explanation which did not convince the Auditor General. Now it is the work of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament to again provide another forum for the accounting officers to explain themselves, after which then a report will be done to Parliament.
Welcome, Bwana Kimani Ichung'wa, the member for Kikuyu. You are a member for Kikuyu?
Yes.
And we have been debating about this Public Accounts Committee. And why, I asked him before you came here, why is there so much sensitivity within the government and within the governorship, in the county governments, about this report? I was saying that I have reported, the Auditor General has been reporting since independence. I've never seen such kind of hulabaloo about the report. Why is it so this time, in your understanding?
Probably because the report was seen to be a little bit sensational. Sensational in the sense that, and I think largely is the way it was reported in the newspapers, that some reported 450 billion shillings have been lost, some 67 billion, others other figures. And as my colleague says, when the auditor reports, gives his report to Parliament, it's part of a process, and the process will end up with the report being interrogated by the Public Accounts Committee, I think where John Mbadi sits, and the Public Investments Committee for the other government agencies and parastatals, where I sit as Vice Chair. And until that process is complete, nobody really can say that this and that amount has been lost. because it will be up to Parliament to interrogate the figures that the Auditor General is reporting. And what you are saying,
the reporters are not reading well.
The
report is there, it's public, so the journalists look at it and say they get the figures from the report.
The journalist will report what the Auditor General is saying. Yes. He could not verify how it was utilized. And that is just what the Auditor General said. And that's what we are saying. The Auditor General maybe was a little bit sensational in saying that this is money that is lost, because it's not in all circumstances that money is lost. Case in point that I have also read in the newspapers, because I'm not privy to the details until those details come to Parliament, is the Attorney General's office, where the Auditor General reported that 2.7 billion shillings could not be accounted for. And the Attorney General went out to say that indeed he has got clearance certificates from the same Auditor General's office showing how that all that money was utilized. And therefore it begs the question whether the reporting by the Auditor General really considered all the information that was availed to the Auditor General's office. And I will tell you from my experience for the last almost 3 years in Parliament now, and sitting in the Public Investment Committee, it so happens that at times, by the time the Auditor General is drafting his report, he may not have received all the information from public officers. And therefore the Auditor General will report with the information that he had at the time his statutory deadline comes into place, and he reports as it is at that time.
But the same statutory deadline is given to ministries and corporations, that by this day and time you should have given your report. If you haven't, then the Auditor General has no choice but to write. Depends on what he has.
Mutagi, I must admit there is a lot of laxity within government. Laxity and public officers, a few public officers taking it for granted. And you will see them now, when this is reported, they will rush to Parliament with all the details. At times the Auditor General, because in both the Public Investments and the Public Accounts Committees, the Auditor General is the one who is given the first opportunity to table his case to the committee. And at times you will find that later he was able to receive the information and tell you this matter has now been cleared. And to me, what may be sensational is that sensational reporting and doing of reports without really going into all the details. But let me also be quick to point out that indeed with the coming in of county governments, let us not lie to ourselves. A lot of public funds are also getting lost. You have seen the resistance that has been there with the governors, even when government says that we need to go to e-procurement and automate most of our procurement and payment systems, because people are used to the old manual systems that are very manipulative. It's easier to manipulate a manual system than an electronic payment and procurement system. And the resistance you're seeing from the governors stems from old ways of doing things, which of course benefit individuals, and therefore we can't really trash the entire report and say that there is no money that has been lost. I want to be very objective and say until and unless all the parties are given a fair opportunity, and that is what Parliament does, they will come to the Public Accounts Committee for the ministries. Those in government, other government agencies and parastatals will come to the Public Investments Committee, and they will get an objective and fair opportunity.
So the question which I've been discussing is this: why is it that these either ministries or governors are rushing to buy space in the newspapers, to call press conferences, or to make utterances in public denouncing the report before it is taken to the Parliament?
Let me say, buying space, I think is going a little bit overboard. But you must also understand. Actually, it begs the question. I saw the same Treasury about 3 or 4 weeks ago issue a directive that all government advertising will have to go through an advertising agency, and it is on need basis. It therefore begs the question whether it was really necessary to buy space using public funds again to clarify a certain position. And you will get that
clarification should have been done in front of the Public Accounts Committee.
It should be done, but also you need to understand, when you wrongly accuse me, again we must give people an opportunity Maybe buying out space is not the best thing. Maybe even doing a press conference which could be free of charge may be a better way of doing it. Buying out space may not be very wise. But you must also understand how jittery you would get if you are accused of having lost in a department that you are running billions of shillings, which you clearly know yourself that you have been able to avail documentation, maybe which has not been considered by the auditor. At times it happens that by the time public officers avail documents to the audit office, they are already in the drafting stage of their reports. And these are officers who, the public audit office are just public officers like any other officers. We do find errors, let me say that. We do find errors in some of those audit reports. I have a case in point of the National Social Security Fund, where last year, I think last year but one, we got a clean report from the Auditor General's office. But we know over the years, NSSF has had massive audit issues that had never been cleared. I was asking last week, I was asking one of the auditors when we visited Hazina Towers on a fact-finding mission of the construction that is going there. You people gave this parastatal a clean bill of health. Then he says, no, we have brought back the issues. So it also brings in a question of competency in the Auditor General's office. Being an accountant, I will tell you, an auditor really never looks at all the transactions in an organization, and therefore we do not expect even the Auditor General will have the opportunity to go back into all the transactions they sample. Therefore, a few things may pass, a few may not pass.
And Mbadi is dying to say something.
Not really, but for me, I think I want to say two things. The first one is with members of parliament. I think we need to hold our horses and wait for the Public Accounts Committee and Public Investment Committee to do its work on these reports. What worries me is where some members are very quick at condemning Auditor General when it comes to national government queries. Yet when it comes to the counties, they are the same ones who are saying the governors need to be held to account, and on the basis of the same Auditor General's report. And so that kind of doublespeak just shows you the kind of laxity among members of parliament, which should not be the case, because we are the watchdog, we oversight the government in its entirety. The other thing that I wanted also to point out is, before the Auditor General does his final report, there is what we call letter of internal weaknesses, or the management letter. And what the auditor does is, once the auditor has gone through the books of accounts and has issues, then they do a management letter to the management and ask them that these are the queries that we intend to raise. Do you have a response? And usually they are the entity that is being audited responds to those queries. So I really don't understand why some accounting officers would wait late in the day to present documents that should be presented to the auditor. You did ask my colleague here, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wa, that the deadlines are set. Yes, the deadlines are there, and I mentioned earlier that from July 1st to September 30th, all accounting units of government, whether it is a parastatal or a government department or a ministry, is given the period 3 months to prepare accounts and have the documentation ready for auditing. Between 1st of October to December 31st, that is the time that constitutionally is provided for the Auditor General to conduct his audit investigations and do a report to Parliament. A lot of times we see the Auditor General spilling over, like this year. Actually, the audit report was ready by May, and that just shows you that the Auditor General gave the accounting units even more leeway, enough time to address audit queries. And therefore, for me, and finally, this is my final comment on the same. I think my friend Rotich, the CS Treasury, did not do the right thing. In my view, Treasury was not on trial. The Auditor General is questioning various government ministries, and I don't think Rotich, within that short period of time, had the capacity and the time allowed to go through the audit report and check with the various government ministries to be able to form an opinion that there was a problem with the Auditor General's report. Because the Auditor General has the personnel We have so many staff. We have, I think, over 1,000 members of staff at his disposal. So he has more capacity to audit the government accounts. He had enough time. He has the statutory backing. So I really don't understand from which background the Treasury CS was responding to this issue at this point in time. Yet he has a permanent representative in the Public Accounts Committee and Public Investment Committee who would also go through these accounts together with members of Parliament. So I think he was rushed into that.
I have had argument that the Auditor General does not have the capacity. That you say he has the capacity.
Oh, well,
because of the 47 counties and the
yes,
national
the Auditor General still needs more staff.
Yes.
To be able to audit the 47 county governments, the various government ministries, the national government, and also the 290 constituencies, the CDF accounts. So we still need to give more staff to the Auditor General, but he also has sufficient staff at least to carry out some reasonable audit investigation. I would say there is no any other institution in this country that could be able to conduct an audit of government much better than the Auditor General.
There's somebody who is agreeing with you here, somebody called even Kikuyu. The Auditor General's audited accounts for the 2013-2014 financial year is fairly accurate. Audit is based on reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. Every audit report has audit working papers for its professional service. I believe that every organization, every ministry, every county had been given management letter to respond to the issues raised by the audit report, but failed to provide a document that supports the transactions. What do you say about this?
Well, I'm constrained to agree with him, and that's what basically we are all in agreement, that the public officers concerned are given an opportunity to avail documents. But it so happens that many of them, and I did mention the question of laxity, you will find many of them simply ignoring, others assuming it's not important. I have more important things to do. And when the Auditor General now raises these questions to Parliament is when people rush with documentation. And I also want to agree that maybe it's not time yet to be very touchy on the subject. Let us give Parliament an opportunity, and we have very able members of Parliament in both the Public Investments and the Public Accounts Committee to interrogate these figures. And once Parliament has interrogated these figures, again the report will be made public. But I think what is of concern to many people, especially the accused or those who are alleged to have lost billions and millions of shillings belonging to taxpayers, is that what happens when now the Auditor General reports, the report is usually sensationalized. When you get cleared, the same is not reported with the same vigor as it was reported when it was reported that money is lost under your watch. And that's why you would understand why people get touchy. But I also want to counter what John Mbadi said, that the Auditor General's office has capacity, and I think is corrected that later, that indeed they have had capacity but not adequate capacity. Remember, this is the same Auditor General's office with almost about the same staff establishment that was auditing a national government that never had the county, the devolved county system. And therefore the work task is much bigger than it was before. You have got to audit all the constituencies, you have got to audit all the county governments, you have got to now audit all government ministries and other parastatals. It therefore begs the question whether is it not time either to have an Auditor General's office that is also devolved to a certain level, to have officers on the ground. And they have regional offices, but the capacity within those regional offices again is very questionable. And I must say some of the glaring errors that we have found, and I say that as a Vice Chair of the Public Investments Committee, very glaring errors that we have found in those Auditor General's report. also brings a question of the credibility and professionalism of those involved in actual audit work on the ground. And it is time maybe that the nation relooked into the Auditor General's office, what kind of people you have hired there, because a number of them also have that public entity mentality, unlike the mentality you find in private companies and even private audit firms. You will find even staff both in public offices, the government departments and ministries, and also staff within the Auditor General's office having that public mentality that this is public money, you don't need to be very detailed in your scrutiny. Therefore, errors do come about, and we must give space for that. But let me just say, it is not time yet to wholesomely condemn that report. There are issues, and the issues will be looked at by both committees of Parliament.
The Deputy President has suggested something which I don't know whether is viable, that the Auditor General and the ministries and the people concerned who are complaining, those who are being misrepresented or whatever he's saying, he's calling it, they look at the figures again. Is that possible? What is he saying?
In fact, I don't think he's asking for a new audit. I've just read it in one of the newspapers. He's not asking for a new audit because it's not even possible for the Auditor General's office to conduct a new audit. But that is actually what usually happens. If the Auditor General has reported that in my ministry, which I run, there is 10 billion shillings missing, I have the opportunity now, and by the time I appear before John Mbadi's committee, to avail those documents to the Auditor General to verify whether that is true. And that actually is what usually happens, that they will avail the documentation because I think that was triggered by Governor Ambora saying that he has documents that can show how he has spent the money that he's being accused of having lost in his government. And he will avail that documentation to the Auditor General's office. The Auditor General will verify. By the time they appear before John Mbadi in the Public Accounts Committee, the Auditor General will be the first person to be given an opportunity. And it so happens, and John Mbadi will bear me witness, that the Auditor General will come and report that indeed, as at the time we did this audit, Kimani Ichung'wa in his ministry had not availed these documents. Further to that, he has now availed the documentation. We have verified, and we have cleared the issue. Then the committee will get an opportunity to understand from Kimani Ichung'wa, why didn't you avail the documentation? And they do make recommendations. If there are officers that we find who are lax, officers who are not availing documentation to the Auditor General in time, we do make recommendations. And I think the challenge now is on the government and other agencies to make sure that they follow through with the recommendations done by Parliament, because there are very many audit reports both from the Public Accounts Committee and from the Public Investments Committee which government agencies and other investigative agencies are yet to take action to. And that is what creates the impunity you see within public officers. I know it will be done and nothing will happen. But the moment you drag people to court for even not availing documents in time, because you know, as John Mbadi said, the timelines that you have. When I worked as an accountant, and John Mbadi has also been an accountant, you are very sensitive to your audit. You know your deadlines, you know by when you should have finished your accounts. When you get your management letter, you go through it and make sure that you clear with the auditor all the issues that you can clear, so that by the time the auditor does his final report, the issues that he has raised are those issues that you really, on matters of principle, you could not agree on. And therefore it is moved on to the next level, which is a board. And I want to say that for government expenditure, the board is Parliament, and Parliament will do its work as a board.
On this, I want to assume that the Deputy President was speaking for the presidency. This is what I would have advised him to do. In my view, I agree with the Kimani Ichung'wa that really when now both committees of Parliament, the Public Accounts Committee and Public Investment Committee, get to investigating these matters, the first thing that will be done is to admit and accept written submission from various accounting officers. And that written submission, the accounting officers first share with the Auditor General's office. And then when they appear before the committees, either the issues could have been cleared or still outstanding. And even if they are cleared, still the Committee of Parliament will ask why was it that they could not be cleared at the time of audit. But what now the presidency should do, which is not stopped by any procedure of parliament or anything. They could take this Auditor General's report, give it to their internal systems, because Treasury has an internal audit system which can audit any government ministry and any government department. If I was Rotich, what I would do is to take that report, pick issues that I think are of concern, because I've looked at that audit report. There are qualified report sections, and qualified means the auditor is suspicious that there could be some loss. There are adverse. Adverse is such a serious verdict from an Auditor General. And then there are unqualified sections where he says things are okay.
Clean.
So if I was the CS Treasury, instead of buying 1 page to write or 2 pages in the newspaper to react, what you do is to commission his internal audit mechanism to look especially at those adverse areas where the auditor suspects that probably money is lost. And then in that case, come up with a report, and we could even start seeing heads rolling before parliamentary committees complete their work, because nothing stops the executive from actually acting on audit report. Finally, because I can see time is not on our side. Finally, I wanted to also react on this issue of sensationalization of the Auditor General's report. I really don't think it is the Auditor General that has sensationalized his report.
Is it the Auditor General or the press?
I have looked at that audit report, and it looks to me that it is the same system of reporting over the years. And I will tell you that Auditor General's report has helped this country many times. Remember, even the last financial year, 2012-2013, is when we got to know about the confidential expenditure in the office of the President. And that was highlighted by the Auditor General's report. And by the way, look at the Public Accounts Committee's report. It agreed largely with the Auditor General's report, and many other ministries, the Public Accounts Committee, and even Parliament finally passed the report of the Public Accounts Committee, agreeing with the Auditor General's report. So I think the Auditor General's report for this 2013-2014, there's nothing so strange about the way it is drafted. And even the newspaper reporting or the media reporting is not unique. Even last year, remember, these issues were highlighted.
Look at it this way.
Yes.
We wrote many years ago, when I was a journalist in a nation, about gold and bag. And so I thought that all the people were saying we exported gold, and they refused completely what we were writing in the media.
Yeah.
But the Auditor General came and said, aha, as far as we're concerned, there are no reports that Kenya exported any gold. Yes. It was the Auditor General who said it. And it remains the same thing as the The tables, the documents were tabled. He said, well, blah, 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 blah. Finally, the Auditor General said, as far as I'm concerned, I'm releasing these deals were fake.
Mutagi,
so you cannot talk about sensationalization.
I'll tell you, Mutagi, and I told you I will be the last person, because of my professional background, to dismiss any auditor's report without going through it with a tooth comb. And that is what I want to promise Kenyans, that both the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investments Committee will go through the two reports, the report of the Auditor General for government and that of parastatals and other government agencies. And I'm sure even the Senate, and I hope this time some of governors will heed the call to appear before the Senate. I think the court ruling was quite clear that they must also be accountable. And the Senate committees in charge will also go through the county accounts with a tooth comb, because issues are raised and they must be looked into. What I find sensational, and I did say, look at even the reporting. Some of our media houses reported 450 billion, others 400 billion, others 67 billion. I am seeing now it is being called 66, others 65 billion. And I think the timing also, there are those of us who felt that it was a bit sensational and was meant to burst the bubble after the optimism and the excitement that came with the Obama visit, and him also admonishing some people on their positions when they were out of government and when they're in government. And
are you saying that? Are you saying the report was held?
There was no reason, Mutagi, why this report would not have been released 2 weeks or 3 weeks earlier, or even 3 weeks later.
And I think by the Auditor General.
Yes, he had all the time.
You think that?
And I think what you heard from what John Mbadi told you, he was even late. So the timing and the way it was reported, and that's why I was quick to answer you, it may be a conspiracy between the media and the Auditor General, and of course those who want to point paint this government as very corrupt. And I'm not saying there is no corruption. I want to go on record and say indeed there are instances where money has been lost, both at the county and national government, and even in government agencies. And that is an opportunity that we should now give to Parliament in its oversight role to go through that report with a truth-com. And we can promise Kenyans we will do that.
Mutegi, let me interject there, because that must be challenged. I think first we need to recognize that the Auditor General's office is created by the Constitution, Article 229. It's a very important institution in the Republic of Kenya, and in terms of accountability. And so we need not to cast aspersions, especially if it is misplaced. First, the Auditor General, we as Public Accounts Committee, we have been with them on this matter of delaying the Auditor General's delaying their report. And one of the reasons that the Auditor General has given, which makes a lot of sense, is the lack of capacity, that he has inadequate staff, and so he had to the same staff have to do a lot of work to put the report together, so that again the same thing that is being accused of today is eliminated, so that it does a good report. And I will tell you that he has been releasing the reports piecemeal. This is just a summary, but for the past 2-3 months, the Auditor General has been releasing piecemeal reports on various government ministries. He has just condensed them into a summary form, what we call the Blue Book. But the same reports have been with Parliament over the years, over the months. And again, I want to add that this report was released to Parliament actually the week just before Obama arrived. It's only that Parliament, it was tabled after. And the media picked it after. So it has nothing to do with Obama, and it has nothing. I see Kimani Ichung'wa is very interested in discussing the Obama visit and the purported bashing of an individual who is not even named. But how I wish one day we would sit here and discuss the visit of Obama. And spend more time and discussing his speech, where he talked about the same corruption that we are talking about today, where he talked about inequality, giving example of a child born in Nyanza and Central with the disparity. And I know it is worse if he made the comparison even between a child born in Central and a child born in Northeastern, and the ethnicity and the ethnic thinking in this country. I wish next time, that's why I'm saying, yes. I wish next time we find time with Kimani Ichung'wa to discuss that Obama visit more objectively, without just throwing one word or the other based on what you said.
I would love that.
My experience is this, that the Auditor General's reports have been all the time ignored by the executive. And when the Public Accounts Committee makes a recommendation, they says so-and-so should never hold public office, so-and-so should be surcharged. Nothing happens. And I expect that this report will come to Parliament. The Public Accounts Committee and Public Investment Committee will summon the concerned accounting officers and make their own recommendations, and nothing will happen. What is the chance of anything happening?
Can I just, because I really wanted to leave probably in the next 2-3 minutes, yes. Please forgive me for that. But I want to say that that is where the problem is in this country, impunity over the years. And I can't just fault the current government for that. It has happened over the years. If you look,
but now we have a new constitution.
Yes, yeah, but even the new constitution did not come in yesterday. I mean, it didn't come in 2013. Give credit to it. I think we need to be objective. Even before the Jubilee administration, I think there has been a lot of laxity. I want to give you examples. One, there are a number of people who have even left office, who were recommended to have left to leave office way before, but they didn't leave the office because the Treasury did not see it fit to effect and implement the report of Parliament, which were passed by Parliament. I want to give you an example, and with all due respect to that office holder, Mr. Ichung'wa. If you follow the Public Investment Committee's report, I can't remember the year, but I think it was 2011, 2012, or 2010, 2011. It is clear that he should not hold a public office. Where is he? He is the one in charge of public service. He is the head of public service in this country. He is sitting right at the seat of power. Yet there is a report of Parliament which has not been revoked, still standing that he should not hold a public office in relation to Kenya Railways. And I can give you names, the Ambassador Makwere. There are many people who actually should not hold any public office based on
Mutege, I want to say one thing.
It's a historic fact.
It is a fact, and I think, to be fair, it's quite factual that there are decisions that are made by Parliament that are never followed through. But again, it begs the question to me of if we are talking and speaking about impunity. Impunity is at all levels of government and across the Kenyan society, even within Parliament. Because for me, it's also impunity if John Mbadi, who was in the 10th Parliament, and I think even in the 9th Parliament, the 10th Parliament, and if a report came to that house that such and such a certain person should not hold public office, and Parliament now, under this new constitution, is given the mandate to vet all public appointments, almost all public appointments, and that information is never available to the House. I did not hear John Mbadi raise that when Joseph Kinyua's name came to Parliament.
Kinyua was not vetted
for record. And I think as a member of Parliament, you have an opportunity, even if the name is not coming to Parliament, to raise those questions on the floor of the House. And I do not know. Let me finish. I do not know if he did.
I did raise.
And if it was raised,
there is an issue. I raised that issue with the Duale. An issue
it is not raising it with Duale, because Duale is not Parliament.
Duale was
raise it on the floor of Parliament.
I did
and have the matter discussed.
We are not here to discuss individuals. But the principle,
I need to respond to that.
I'm talking about the hypocrisy.
The truth is this: I raised this matter in Parliament with the Speaker. Duale was supposed to respond to this issue on the floor of Parliament. He failed to do it. Up to today, I asked for that question so many times.
I don't think we should.
But the truth is
the hypocrisy that I want to bring up. Because it is hypocrisy when you hold information that is going to help this country move forward in the fight against corruption. Because there's nothing that stops me as a member of Parliament, whether I'm John Mbadi or Kimani Ichung'wa, from even bringing a motion to discuss the conduct of that public officer and ask the House to make a decision based on information that you have or that is in public domain. Nothing stops any member of Parliament, not just John Mbadi.
Myself is not about individuals. It is a fact that Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee makes recommendations to the executive, never implemented. Why would anybody in public service, therefore, take bother about whether they appear in a PAC, whether they appear in Auditor General's report, since nothing will happen to them? Why would they bother?
I think moving forward, Mutagi, that is a challenge we have as a country. And it is not just within the executive. Even for Parliament, under the new constitution, I think the Committee of Implementation, that committee in Parliament has a huge role to ensure that all reports that are passed by the House are actually implemented. And maybe sanction even those government agencies, be it EACC, be it CID, be it ministry officials, who Parliament has made recommendations for certain things to be done against them, and nothing is done. Because it is that impunity that perpetuates corruption year in, year out. But the moment that we start taking action and people are taken to court, those who ought to leave public office do leave public office, then people will know the fight against corruption is not just about talk, but we will also act on it. And I think the one thing I can't say without any shadow of doubt is that the Jubilee government is more than committed to ensuring that all these things are followed through. And I would really challenge anybody to table any evidence of officers or issues that have been tasked to the government to act and then not been acted on.
I don't know, with that, those ones from the two members of Parliament, I'm not sure whether Jubilee government or court government or any government.
There is no court government.
Wherever, when they will be, whether they will be able to sort out this matter. The story of the fact of the matter is that Public Accounts Committee reports, Public Investments Committee reports in this country have always been ignored. People are not charged, people are not punished when they steal from government. And that's where the problem is. We now go to the other